Well, good evening, everyone. I'm happy you're here, and I'm particularly happy that Sister Helen is here. My name is Marshall Dayan. I'm chair of the board of Pennsylvanians against the death penalty. Uh, I have known Sister Helen for quite a long time, and I am honored to think of myself as her friend. But
Indeed.
I will not be introducing her tonight, and I will ask Sister Kari Pohl if she will introduce Sister Helen.
Thank you. I'd also like to extend my welcome to all of those who are joining us tonight. Sister Helen Prejean is a member of the Congregation of St. Joseph, a group of women religious in the Roman Catholic faith tradition, and is known internationally for her tireless work against the death penalty. I was raised in Michigan, which in 1847 became the first government in the English-speaking world to outlaw capital punishment for murder and lesser crimes. As a Michigander, I never really thought about the death penalty until my college roommate was asked to read the book Dead Man Walking, an eyewitness account of the death penalty in the United States, for one of her classes. The book was transformative for her and for many of my other friends. So despite my heavy course load, I decided to pick it up and read it myself. And that was my encounter with its author, Sister Helen Prejean. The book, which chronicles her relationship with and experience of accompanying a man on Louisiana's death row to his execution in the electric chair, was on the New York Times bestseller list for 31 weeks, has been adapted into an Academy Award-winning movie starring Susan Sarandon and Sean Penn, a play, the most performed new opera of the 21st century, and a new graphic edition which was just released last year. This book also started my work against the death penalty, which followed me to Ohio, Missouri, which is where I first heard Sister Helen speak in person, and now Pennsylvania, states which all continue to sentence people to death. Sister Helen is the author of two other books, The Death of Innocents, an eyewitness account of wrongful executions, and River of Fire, My Spiritual Journey, and is now working on a book about Manuel Ortiz, a wrongly convicted man who is currently on Louisiana's death row. She's also on the board of directors of an organization called Friends of Bataola, which supports the Centro Cultural de Bataola Norte in Managua, Nicaragua. For 6 years, I lived in Bataola Norte and would get to see Sister Helen when the board of directors would make their annual visit to the neighborhood center. So our paths have crossed a little bit over the years. This is the first time, however, that I've had the honor and privilege of getting to introduce Sister Helen. Sister Helen Prejean, welcome.
Well, thank you, Sister Carrie. That was great. And Bataola, man, we were connected at Bataola. That's wonderful. Okay, I'm really glad to be part of this with Pennsylvania. There was, Pennsylvania's been at it. I believe in citizen groups on the ground, standing up, saying what's going on is wrong and we can change this. It's the way we flourish in this country. It's the way we grow in this country, and I really believe in it. So I've been involved with Pennsylvania for a long time, maybe close to, I don't know how long you were involved, but there was somebody, Marshall, do you remember this, by the name of Pam, who led the Pennsylvania Coalition for anybody remember this from the early history of Pennsylvania at all?
I didn't get here till 2007, Sister Helen.
Oh, you little youngster. So anyway, but here we go, citizen groups, and usually it's coalitions. I'm thinking of Louisiana, I'm thinking of all. We struggle for money. We use because we notice that rich people do not tend to readily say, "Yeah, I want to abolish the death penalty." They're usually on the other side, and it's interesting to think of this connection of how the more readily people are involved with poor people in their struggles for justice, the quicker they get it about the death penalty. In fact, I said to Pope John Paul in a letter to him about the Catholic American bishops that those closest to the poor got it about the death penalty. Those who were mostly associated with the wealthy didn't. And in my own life found out that when we have any kind of when we're comfortable physically, materially, We live in a nice house. We got health care. We're educated. It's not that we can have bad intentions. It's just that we tend to be insulated. And in my own life, like I wrote about this in River of Fire, about awakening to social justice, because I grew up in privilege in Baton Rouge. And here I was in my family, my daddy, a successful lawyer. We lived in the big house, and we had African American servants. Ellen worked in the house with Mama, and Jesse, her husband, worked in the yard. I never knew their last names. And they lived in the servants' quarters behind our big house. And I never questioned the Jim Crow laws because I didn't experience anything bad. And Mom and Daddy were kind. And see, that tricks us. That's tricky because if you're kind to people, and I thought that's what the Christian life was all about. As long as you're kind and you're charitable, and I'm a teacher, I wasn't a mean teacher. I was kind to the people around you. But it was the waking up to justice that really set me on fire and delivered me directly. I almost feel like I fell down a laundry chute sometimes, right on to writing a man on death row and then going to visit him and then accompany him. And then it was the witnessing of his execution that set the fire in my heart that blazes to this day. So we're all on a journey. And when I wrote the book, Dead Man Walking, if I had not had that really good editor, Jason Epstein at Random House, to help me shape the story of the book, you never would have heard of Dead Man Walking. And it was this that I sent him the first draft, and it was all about human rights of people, that we shouldn't be executed, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, inalienable rights simply because we are persons, not to be killed, right, inalienable right to life. Governments don't give these human rights to people for good behavior. They can't take it away for bad behavior. All human rights, human rights. And Jason looked at me, and we sat there in front of the first draft, and he said, "You're a good writer, a gritty good writer, but nobody's going to read your book. And you got the nun thing working against you too, because you believe in Jesus. Jesus said we ought to forgive our enemies. And if you don't talk about the crime in the first pages of this book, in the first 10 pages of this book, nobody's going to read your book because they're going to think you're a Catholic nun. You're not going to be able to face what they did, what the murders were, how, and the suffering of the victims. So if you don't change your book and rearrange it so that the first thing you do is show these innocent teenage kids that go to a football game on a Friday night and they end up being shot in the back of the head in a sugarcane field by these two brothers, Pat and Eddie Saunier, and you don't do it in its full gory and the suffering of the families, nobody's going to read your book. And I got a sense of the journey that we have to first go and feel the outrage of what happens to people, innocent people. And then he said, your job is to walk with people on this thin wire, cross them through the experiences of the book and your experiences with this man and his brother who did the killings, and to the execution chamber and bring your reader there. And see, I didn't know the power of a book because I'm from Louisiana. We really believe in talking to each other. And I thought of a book as a passive, you have to buy it in a bookstore. It's silent. When you read a book, you're silent. I had no idea how, when you can take them on a journey with you, that through their imagination, they can truly be transformed by the reading of a book because they're picturing it. But you have to take them in the journey and not jump. You can't jump into, let's talk about the human rights of this person about to be executed. Well, what about these two teenage kids? Look at their parents suffering. So I learned from him how you shape a story. And whenever I speak in front of an audience to take them on the journey, we always begin with it. And I begin with my own naivete. I didn't know anything. I mean, all while Tim Robbins was writing the screenplay of the movie at Dead Man Walking, he kept saying it was true. The nun's in over her head. I was in over my head. What did I know about the criminal justice? I don't know anything. Later, I found out that maybe that was a good thing to be an author of a book, because there had been books written on the death penalty already. Dead Man Walking came out in 93. There were a number of books already out on the death penalty that had been published in the United States. It kept me from writing a book for a while. I thought, why should I write a book? But nobody had done a personal journey book. And not to know anything might have given an added interest to the reader because, hey, look, let's see what happens to the nun. She didn't know what she's doing either. And so that's how it all began. And I've been doing it ever since. And I got to tell you, the hope, I've experienced it in the people. And Thurgood Marshall said it. It's been our mandate from the beginning, Thurgood Marshall. A lot of the American people say they believe in the death penalty. Bring them close. Educate them. They believe in a theoretical death penalty. Bring them close and they will not support the death penalty. And that is true. We got our work cut out for us, but it is not hopeless work. And the hearts of most American people are good, and they really don't want their government killing in their name. But you have to bring them close. And that's our work, and that's what Pennsylvanians do. That's what we do in Louisiana. It's what we do all over. And we use whatever tools we can. And groups like Witness to Innocence actually have real live human beings that can testify about how broken the system is and how innocent people are thrown in with the guilty because we've set up a human, all too human system. And just one insight I've gotten about the Gregg decision that put the death penalty back in the United States has two very essential fault lines in it. One is they gave an impossible criteria in which we're supposed to be able to determine who deserves death. And get this, y'all. Not for ordinary murders, but only the worst of the worst. Who knows the difference between the killing of a human being, and we're going to call that ordinary, and we're going to call this the worst of the worst? It's a fuzzy criteria, which means that then it's left up to the whim and subjectivity of the ones who are going to decide it. And then the other fault line that's in the Gregg decision that put the death penalty back is that it gives huge discretion to prosecutors to seek death or not. It's up to these individuals. I mean, look at Governor DeSantis, the executive of his state. He's choosing to kill people like mad. Look at what Trump did in his first term in office, chose to have 13 people on federal death row killed before he left office. Sent in Bill Barr as his attorney general. I want these people killed. And I happen to know some of those people and the lawyers who were working with them. That Friday night in here, Brandon, what's his last name? The guard, and he grew up on death row. He was 19 when he went to death row in Terre Haute. Grew up. And here these two guards come to us, and he knew them, and they were usually joking and smiling, and they're not smiling. And they just said, Brandon, you got to come with us. And so he did. He walked down the tier with them, and they're quiet. And it's worrisome. And it was during the time of COVID, so they had on masks, but he could tell their eyes were very serious. And he walks with him down at the end of the tier at a room. The warden is sitting at a table, and he reads out to Brandon, in 6 weeks, your execution will be carried out by order of the Attorney General of in the federal system. And Brandon was walked back to his cell and said, I couldn't close my eyes. What just happened? And it was like, kaboom. The decision of an individual is that you're going to die, and you got 6 weeks. And he said, I've built my life over all this time, and now within 6 weeks, they're going to kill me. It's incomprehensible that we have this system in place. So there's a lot of ways, I think, by these stories and by what we're learning, that we take each other close. And then we ask deeply moral questions to each other. Like, come on, where else in the criminal justice system do we ever imitate the crime to determine the punishment that we're going to give people? You kill, we're going to kill you. Where else do we do that? And then to justify it by saying that there are some crimes by their very nature. Well, who determines what those crimes are by their very nature? Look how human the system is. And that's how we get a lot of all of the mistakes that we're making as well. So, so that's my little opener. And I want to emphasize the hope. We got to get organized. We got to get the money we need. We got to get to the people. But when we do, we're going to get this. We're going to do it. When the book Dead Man Walking came out in 93, y'all get this, 93, 80% of the American public supported the death penalty on the up-down question. You support the death penalty for these terrible crimes? Yeah. And now it's closer to 50, a little over 50%. And when the alternative of a life sentence is given, over 60% of people choose life. Juries choose life. Juries, look at, they're not new death sentences coming down. They're very rare. And the ones like DeSantis going after people, or our governor here in Louisiana who ran on a campaign saying we're going to empty out death row. You know, all this tough business of, fight fire with fire and kill the killers and all that. He can only go after the people we have on death row from before. There's no new death sentences being given out in Louisiana. In fact, we had a 17-year hiatus on all executions. There's not much zeal for killing people anymore. And so if you even have that in a deep South state like Louisiana, imagine the others. Okay, anybody want to respond? Marshall, what you got?
Helen, I was thinking about my first capital client, David Pruitt, who was
Oh,
killed in Virginia. And I spent the day with David. We just sat and talked, held hands. And about 11 o'clock at night, Warden Charles Thompson came down the hallway and he said, "It's time." And he took out a piece of paper and he read this official paper about how the state of Virginia was going to execute David. And he had the guard there unlock the cell, and they were going to take David from this cell he was in just maybe 10, 12 feet down the hall to where the electric chair was. And I said to Warden Thompson, "Warden Thompson, can I give him a hug?" And the warden said, "No." And that hurts now. That hurts as much right now as it hurt that night. And that was in 1992. And what the system does is it dehumanizes people.
yeah.
And when I say dehumanize, I think, well, that's hard to do. But what I've learned is it's so much easier to do than we think that it is, to dehumanize another human being. And it's what allows us to go to war, and it's what allows us to carry out executions and to sentence people to death. We just don't, it makes it easier for us if we don't treat other people like they're humans, just like we are.
Well, that's the heart of it, Marshall, I think. You got to turn some switch that what you're doing, because you want to be a decent human being, right? I'm thinking of this woman warden that officiated over the death of Ivan Cantu 2 years ago. hair all coiffed, impeccably dressed, no emotion, just standing there doing her role to carry it out. And people, I put this in Dead Man Walking. After Pat was electrocuted, who killed this man? Well, everybody can point. Well, Supreme Court put it back, but the jury made the decision, but a prosecutor, and everybody can point. But you have to demean the person in some way to say they're not human like we are in order actually to kill them. And we identify them with their crime. When you come to the mystery of the human person, we can never be identified our essence totally with our actions. We're always more than our actions because we can always change. One time, the warden, one of the wardens, I think I've been through like 4 or 5 wardens since I've been going to Angola prison. John Whitley said to me one time, he said, "Sister, for which crime men are sent here, where they usually become the best trustees." And I said, "No, Ward what?" And he said, "Those that come for murder." A lot of them, when they got up in the morning, they didn't know they were going to murder somebody. It came out of a bunch of events coming together. Very few, or very seldom, you sit down, you plan, I'm going to go murder somebody, and then you go murder them. You get in a bar fight, or it's a robbery gone bad, and he said they get here and they read books and they get a little education and they have to learn how to get along with everybody and they change. Human beings change, and it's part of the mystery of the human person. And I love that. I think this comes straight from the Torah, that to save a life is to save a whole universe. Isn't that part of the Jewish tradition?
It's from the Talmud.
The Talmud, okay.
Whoever saves one life, it is as though he has saved the entire world.
Yeah.
We often don't say the second part. Whoever takes a single life, it is though he has destroyed the entire world.
Oh man, yeah, that's an important thing to bring out as the second part. Yeah.
And it just tells us about the sanctity, the immeasurable sanctity of every single human being.
I remember visiting the first time. I'd never been on death row, and this first man, Patrick Sonier, and I was so scary to go on death row. I'd never done anything like this before. And the guard kept going, "Woman on the tier, woman on the tier," and everybody's like shrinking back, and all the clang of bars they kept bringing me into, and then locked me in a room. Said, "Well, go get your man." And then I noticed that he was going to be locked inside kind of this wire cage. Tell you the truth, I was glad. I was on one side and he was on the other because I thought, I've never visited with a murderer before. I mean, I was scared of him. And the guards brought him in, locked him in, and I looked through that wire mesh screen right into this face. And I went, oh my God, he's human. He's human. And we had 2 hours and the time flew. And Pope Francis, that was a big theme with him, is the encounter. And there's this saying in Latin America that I've become conscious of, that what the eye does not see, the heart cannot feel. And that's why we still have the death penalty, is because people don't see it. It's a secret ritual behind prison walls and only a few people see it. But those of us that are witnesses, we have a moral imperative to be witnesses and to share and to bring the American people close. Look, this is what we're doing, and we don't have to keep doing this. And then the two things: that we can be safe as a society without having the state imitate the killing, and then that the costliness, there's a moral costliness, but just look at the millions spent on killing a few people or keeping the death penalty in place. And this, I think, is going to be an argument for Pennsylvania because you still got it in place, the machinery. And look at the millions you're spending. And are the people any safer from having that, or than if people had life sentences. I mean, so safety and cost, we could be safe without imitating and killing. And people have good hearts. We gotta just give them a chance. Somebody's face appeared earlier, but then they went away. I don't know who made them disappear.
Helen, you made me think of David Pruitt, who I hadn't thought about in quite a while. I'll share this story and get you to react to it. Um, I started representing David when I was working in the District of Columbia, and then I moved to North Carolina and took a job with the state of North Carolina in the Death Penalty Resource Center. And so, Monday through Friday during the days, I had to work on North Carolina cases. And so I had to work on David's case in Virginia on the weekends and in the evenings. And I got home from work one day and there was a box in my mailbox, a little cardboard box. And took the cardboard box out of the mailbox and took it inside and opened it up and had a little sterling silver ring with a blue sapphire in it. But there was no invoice, there was no card, there was no nothing. So I said, well, this is a mistake. And I put the ring back in the ring box and the ring box back in the cardboard box and figured out I'm going to send this back somewhere. The next day I got home from work, there was another little cardboard box in my mailbox.
Huh.
And I opened it up and it had a woman's wristwatch in there. Again, no invoice, no card, no note, no nothing. So again, I'm thinking, well, this is very strange. Obviously, some orders are getting sent to the wrong address. I need to send these back. On the third day, I got a card from my former client, David Pruitt. And the card said, Marshall, you've been representing me for 7 years. You're working for the state of North Carolina, but you're doing this Virginia case on your weekends and in your evenings. And you didn't have to do that. And, I might not be where I am if I'd have had a friend like you are earlier in my life.
Wow.
So I wanted you to have this ring that's got your birthstone in it. And I sent the wristwatch for your wife because I know that all those times you were coming to see me and working on my case, she was sharing you with me. And she didn't have to share you with me. And I wanted her to know how much I appreciated the fact that she shared you with me. And I thought to myself, this is a person that the state of Virginia says is unworthy of life. How could someone who has this kind of motivation and do this kind of act, how can this person be unworthy of life?
Yeah.
And it has stuck with me for a very, very long time, as you can tell, and
Sure.
and it was just an extraordinary gift and an extraordinary insight of his
Yeah.
to try
You
and
know what?
find the way to
It's
say
just an
thank you.
interesting thing to reflect on, Marshall, of how we have been changed by the people that we've been privileged to accompany. We are not just stayed neutral in all this. It's had an effect on us. I've learned. I mean, this man now that I'm accompanying on death row, Manuel Ortiz, get this. He's been on death row 33 years. I call him my Nelson Mandela. Totally innocent. So just writing the book, he said, I just want the truth to get out there. I was silent. I had to sit there while all the lies were told. And I've noticed how his mood has shifted since he knows we're writing the book. I have Tom Dibdall, I don't know if you ever met him, he's a public defender in DC, doing the book with me because I really need help through all the legal stuff. And I've noticed how it's helped Manuel's mood shift. It used to be when you visited him, he would just bore down and drill down into each of the things that happened and the lies that were told and the lies that were told. And then they told this lie. So that 2 hours of visiting and just your eyes would blur over because he couldn't stop. Because the truth wasn't out. And now knowing that the book's being written, we don't know if it's going to help him in the courts. We don't know ultimately what the book's going to do. But the fact that the truth is going to be told, it has made an amazing difference in him. And so anyway, and I just think when I drive away from the prison after seeing him, he's going back into that cell and I'm going into freedom. And what am I going to do with that? It's a moral imperative inside you in a good way. The way we talk about the Holy Spirit in us. Like, you got to do this. And it's not like I'm the wonderful nun who goes pours herself on these poor wretches. The best stuff in life is mutual, I think. What you doing? You must be reading the chats or something. I see you looking down. The nun's got your number, bud.
I think we might have some questions, and I was hoping that we could
Let's
maybe
go.
take a look at some of these questions.
Sure.
Why don't all our bishops respond to ending the death penalty with the same passion as they do to end abortion?
What do you think? I'll give you some of the first shots at that, and I'll add to it. And maybe other people want to get involved too. Why do you think? What's the difference between an unborn child and somebody who's murdered somebody else? That's what we got to think about. Marshall, want to take a crack at it?
Well, it seems, it's a little funny for me to be talking about what bishops do or don't do, but
Kari's laughing.
I'm glad to sort of share where you were going, which is, of course, that people see people generally see folks who have committed crimes as different, as not innocent, and as not the same as them, and as deserving of punishment. And those of us who oppose capital punishment don't all oppose criminal law. We don't all oppose some punishment of some sort. We oppose the notion, I think, that anyone is irretrievably criminal. I mean, I oppose criminal acts, but I judge the act as evil, not the person as evil. There's this very famous Talmudic story, and I hate to sort of take time away from you, Helen, but
No, this is a sharing, and I love to hear these stories. I want to hear this.
There's this
I bet Kari does too.
Very famous Talmudic story of a rabbi named Meir who gets mugged every day on his way home from synagogue.
Every day?
Every day gets mugged on his way home from synagogue. And he comes home one day and he's gotten mugged again. And he starts praying that God will kill the sinners, kill the muggers. And his wife scolds him. His wife, Beruria, says, Meir, what are you doing? We shouldn't be praying for the death of the sinner. We should be praying that the sinner repents and turns away from evil. And according to this Talmudic story, Meir says to his wife, you're right as always. And he changes his prayer from praying for the death of the muggers to praying that they repent. And as a result of his prayers that they repent, they repent.
Oh, that's great. That's a great story. Okay, so getting back, Kari, what's your take on this? Why do you think the bishops, or if you notice, not just bishops, but a lot of religious people would be against an abortion but would say yes to the death penalty?
There's a similar question in the chat box or in the Q&A about Ron DeSantis, who claims to be a faithful Catholic and actually has ties to the town right across the river from me. Um, and I can't read their minds. Ron DeSantis is a little bit inaccessible. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to have a conversation with him. However, most of us might be able to catch our bishop's ears now and then.
Mhm.
And so, I encourage anybody who's on this call, the next time you see your bishop, ask.
Yep. That's a different ball game now for Catholics because there was a 1500-year dialogue in the Catholic Church to reach a point in 2018 of changing the official teaching about the death penalty. And this is what I mean by the hope of how when people share with each other and learn and grow that we can change. And we can see this in the Catholic Church. So you go to 5th century, St. Augustine of Hippo in Africa. He was the first to depart from the teaching of Christ, which explicit and always had been nonviolent. You pray for the enemy. You pray for those who persecute you. You forgive your enemies. But as history was happening, chaos had been enveloping because you had the Goths and the Visigoths and the Huns, and you had the whole, what was called the bearded people or barbarian invasions, and there was chaos. So Augustine was the first one to say, in cases to keep society safe, the violent may be coerced with the sword. Now, that could be used for war, it could be used for anything. But anyway, that 5th century. And then you just see the church upholding the right of the state. And that was the actual wording that had to change in the Catholic Catechism was the state has the right to take life. So bump along, bump along, bump along. You have Thomas Aquinas in the 12th century that the state has a right to take life of a violent person and comparing it always with defense of society. It was never this tit for tat thing. The nature of some crimes is so terrible. The only thing that is a just solution is to do to them what they did to them. Not that, never that. And like you had Thomas Aquinas saying, well, like if you have a gangrenous arm, you cut it off for the good of the health of the whole body. A rabid dog in the community, you put the dog down for the defense and health of the whole community. Always about the defense. But then what's happening is we begin to build prisons. We begin to have a way to keep society safe without having to kill the people. And then you have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that happened in 1948 under Eleanor Roosevelt's leadership. Universal Declaration, simply by being persons, what rights do we have? And Article 3, the right to life, everyone. And there was a debate right away. And people said, oh, but we ought to make exception except for the death penalty where people do these terrible crimes. And you go, no, no, no. Universal rights. We want to have the ideal there. Later, Pope John the 23rd in the Catholic Church, who inaugurated the Second Vatican Council and the reforms of the Church, pointed to the Universal Declaration. He said, that's our beacon of light that we can all follow. That simply by being a person, there's a dignity. In faith, we Catholics say, made in the image and likeness of God. Do y'all say that too, Marshall? Is that a Jewish expression? Y'all say that?
Yeah, in Hebrew, it's B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God.
There you go. Look at that. So anyway, debate. And in that dialogue that was going on, this whole thing of, in my dialogue with Pope John Paul II, through this man, Joseph Odell in Virginia, who was being executed, in all probability was innocent. And I said that to the Holy Father. I said, I mean, so many Catholics who say they're pro-life, but they mean innocent life, only innocent life, but not guilty life. And when I'm walking with a man to execution who's surrounded by guards. He's going to be strapped down. He's rendered completely defenseless and killed. Where is the dignity in that death? Is it only the innocent that we uphold their dignity? And that was the debate. I was a small part of it, but it was bubbling up all over the place. When consciousness reaches a tipping point, consciousness and conscience, things change. And so bubbled up. You had Pope John Paul II, and then by the time you come to Francis, who was so identified with poor people and those on the margins and and then he was the one then who finally changed the catechism. So it changed. So now it used to be when I'd go into a diocese or a place to give a talk, I didn't know what that bishop might do, Catholic bishop. And a lot of times, like our own Archbishop in New Orleans, when I first started working in the 80s, he had been a chaplain in the military. He was for the death penalty, and no Louisiana bishop at any hearing, legislative hearing, could ever speak against the death penalty because the Archbishop was on the other side. And so it took years of that silence, not participating. But now that's changing. And I love what you said, Kari. When you next time you meet your bishop, ask him about it. Right. What other questions we have in the chat?
There's a question. Have you read the book? I'm presuming it's the book Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. It says just Mercy. Have you read that book, and how does it compare with your experiences?
Right. Well, Brian, I mean, if you look at all the years now, as a lawyer, you'll appreciate this, Marshall. All the years working with in these Alabama prisons and with these prisoners, years and years and years. And what's the name of the guy, Macmillan? Who was the first one that he actually freed? You don't always win, but
Walter
he did.
McMillian.
Walter Macmillan. Macmillan, yeah. And I love that about Brian, all the work over all the years. And then finally, so when he launched his book, I got to be in conversation with him at the New York Public Library, the two of us, two Southerners up there. And we had all kind of people. It was a great crowd. They had filmmakers, all kind of people there that day. And Brian got to tell his stories. And he's such a simple, good man. And oh, God, is he a good storyteller? He is a good storyteller. So I always learn from him when I'm with him. And then look what he's done with this museum in Montgomery of, the whole thing of the lynching and the history to bring it home to people. He's just a great guy. And yes, I have read Just Mercy. And yes, I have seen the film.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's another question, and this one it might be hard. Have you ever known a case in which a young child, 6 years or younger, who has a family member who has an execution date, and how would you explain that imminent death to the child?
I've witnessed it. I've witnessed when Dobie was going to be killed. Dobie had an IQ of 65. Atkins was decided a couple of years after his execution. It would have saved his life. And his last moments with his family. And he had his little nephew in there, Anthony. And Dobie's mama sitting there. These are the last hours of her child's life. And there they are sitting in the death house. There's the warden trying to be a good guy. Look, we got food for y'all. We got a TV for you while you wait over there, And little Anthony is just walking, and they got this in the movie. He had little tennis shoes. And as he walked, his little tennis shoes were squeaking on the floor. And because they'd run out of words to say. And there he is. He was just about 8 or 9. And here he is with his Uncle Dobie in the last hours of his life. And so Dobie's mother, the kid says to her, sing us a song, sing us a song, a hymn. And she said, what do you want me to sing? And I'm trying to think the name is a very joyful song. Oh, happy day when Jesus walked. I mean, sometimes you just can't comprehend. What did somebody wise said, you live life in the present, but to find meaning in life, you always have to reflect on what has happened. You can't at the time take it all in. You just can't. And there's Dobie's mama singing, Oh, happy day. And there's Dobie in his last hours with his mama. Kids don't get it, but I don't get it either. Who gets it? I really don't get it.
There's a question in here specific to Pennsylvania. So maybe Sister Helen, maybe Marshall, maybe both. What do you recommend to advocates to abolish the death penalty in Pennsylvania? Or what ways can we move forward from our current moratorium to abolition?
There are two bills to abolish the death penalty sitting in the House Judiciary Committee in Harrisburg. One is sponsored by a Republican legislator, and one is sponsored by a Democratic legislator. And they are identical, word for word. One is House Bill 888, and one is House Bill 999. And those of us in Pennsylvania that want to get rid of the death penalty here feel like it doesn't make any sense. We haven't executed anybody here in Pennsylvania since 1997, but we're still putting people on death row, not as frequently as we used to, but we're still putting people on death row, and we're still spending millions and millions of dollars on these capital cases and not providing particularly good representation. We ought to be calling our legislators, writing our legislators, and asking, why are these two bills sitting there in the House Judiciary Committee, House Bill 888 and House Bill 999, and letting our legislators know we want those bills to come for a vote.
That is the way it's going to change. That's the only way it's going to change. So how can we rouse the people? How can we get to them, to be close? One of the things that I've found in working with groups to bring them on the journey, the film of Dead Man Walking brings people on the journey, and it ends by showing Matthew Poncelet being executed. He's been on a journey. He acknowledges his wrong. He asks for forgiveness. And there he is on the gurney executed. And then it goes right to showing the crime again. They're juxtaposed with each other. And you see Matthew Poncelet actually killing the boy, raping the girl. And the audience gets both of those images at the end of the film. And the theater manager said they had never shown a film where at the end people just stayed in their seats and then filed out in silence when the screen went blank. But what's good about that film is it gets people started in the first part of the journey where you can express outrage at the death of innocent people and then go through the whole journey of the death penalty. And then have postcards and have ways to write and to call. And that's what we got to do. I mean, your bills are there. And what's a governor like?
Our governor, one of the very first things he did when he took office, within the first 3 weeks of him being our governor, he held a press conference. Our executive director, Kathleen Lucas, was there. Others were there. And he said, not only am I going to extend my predecessor's moratorium, but I am calling on the legislature to send legislation to repeal the death penalty to my desk. And when it gets here, I will sign it.
Oh, man. Wow. Well, it's fertile ground. What is it that people are just tired or they've run out of energy or other things have what is it? Where's the malaise coming from that you can tell? Or somebody out there in the audience. Get involved in this discussion with us. What can we do to get the fire going? We can't hear you.
Yes, yes. I remember how to do Zoom now. Um, there's there's a similar question about if you could give one piece of advice to people who want to help end the death penalty in the US, what would it be? Because not everybody lives in a state that actively has the death penalty at all, right? However, the United States still has the death penalty. And so,
Well, but let's just stay with
oh, okay,
Pennsylvania for a while
sure, sure.
because I mean, I'm trying to get $2 million for us in Louisiana. I know if we could have a massive campaign with the people, I know we could end it here. I believe we can end it anywhere if you can just get to the people. Uh, but to but to get something going and get the young people, like a postcard campaign of young people to start writing to that Judiciary Committee to start the calls. Because here you have the governor like inviting. I mean, that's so unusual. I mean, God, we got a governor who campaigned on the empty death row. There's a certain constellation that has to happen, and you may have part of the constellation in place, but it's to get the people going. What can you see any positive forces happening in the state that get people talking and get people thinking and reflecting and anything?
Well, we have some of these campaigns going, Helen. We have cards. They're not postcards exactly, but anybody who wants should get in touch with us at padp.org,
Mhm,
padp.org. And
mhm.
the reason that they're not postcards is we really would like to collect these cards. And we ask people to sign 5 of them, one for your state representative, one for your state senator, one for your district attorney, one for the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, and one for the governor of Pennsylvania.
Oh,
And we have
great.
collected hundreds of these cards already. And the idea
Okay.
is that we can then, once we finish this campaign of collecting thousands of these cards, we can set up visits with our
Yeah.
elected officials and
Yeah.
hand carry
Yeah. That'd be
to a
great.
representative. Here are hundreds of cards signed by your constituents who want you to move this bill. They
Yeah.
want you to
Yeah.
pass this bill. And
Yeah.
we're not just making it up. Here's the proof. Here's the evidence. And we've
Yeah.
already collected hundreds of them, and we really want to collect thousands of them. So it's a really terrific campaign, and I encourage people, uh,
Yeah.
Pennsylvanians, um, wherever you're from in Pennsylvania, please go to our website, padp.org, and write us, and we will get you these cards and get them. You put your name and address and email address and send them back to us so that we can hand carry those cards
Okay. That's a great idea. And you
to
know
our
what else is a
legislators.
good idea? Ask young people to start writing letters to that Judiciary Committee, even if they can't vote yet. Young people have a special power. They don't know they do, but they do. And imagine if they start getting letters from young people in the state just saying, the death penalty, look at all we're doing to keep that machinery of death going, and we could really help victims' families. Look at all the needs we have in our state, and let young people start writing to them and calling them to work with the different universities, work with different high schools. They'd need their parents' permission, of course, but it'd be great to involve their parents in dialogue in the high school. But what if you had a young people's campaign in Pennsylvania and it could make the difference? I mean, I get to talk to young people in universities, and I'm going to tell you, they are ready. They're looking. Well, that's what it means to be young. You want to make a difference in the world. So, boy, if we could unleash that in some kind of way, the young people of Pennsylvania, to inaugurate that change. Because look at all you got going for you already. You got a lot going for you.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and we're trying to reach out to high schoolers.
Great.
We've had some high schoolers who have taken on this
Good.
issue as a project,
Wonderful.
and so they've done some speaking for us, and they've gone and visited, done constituent visits with their legislators.
That's
And
good.
I think you're exactly right that it's that young people can really make a difference to
Yeah.
some of these people who are cynical, let's say. Uh,
Maybe just kind of tired. I mean, let's get that young energy in there. Oh, that would be a great thing. It would. It would.
there's
Good.
a gentleman who wrote in a question about he's new to the issue, but he's been a pen pal with somebody on death row, and he has to write a clemency letter, and he
Oh,
asked
well.
for some advice
Oh,
about
well.
what to say in his clemency letter. Can you uh, give him some advice about what he might say in his clemency letter?
Well, the best I got is that you've gotten to know him in a personal way through letters. And so you don't want to claim more than you have. And you also don't want to get off on the whole issue of the death penalty and why it's wrong and all. It's just about this man, I know he's changing all the good qualities. Why not let him grow? Is it clemency to get off of death row?
Yes, I think so. That's at least my
Okay, which
understanding.
means he'll still be in prison, probably, right? But that he can grow as a human being and he can be a loving presence in the community there in prison to his brothers, and that this is what I've noticed about him and what I'm learning from him. Uh, and just that essential dignity and that people can grow. And you witnessed it in him. Want to make sure that you don't just get on the kick about why the death penalty is wrong and all this stuff. Just this man, this human being, the worth in him, and that he can grow. And it just shows when we have that hope in people, we can all grow.
What are some ways that folks across the country can work toward ending the death penalty in the U.S.?
We'll see in the U.S. boils down to what would be done in Pennsylvania, young people writing letters and getting involved. The same things apply.
There you go.
Yeah. See, I just keep, you know, thinking and thinking, what can we do? I know we got to get some money, that we got to do massive education of the people. I know if we got good tools. I mean, Brian Stevenson's book and his film are both excellent. I know Dead Man Walking, if people see that film, it stirs in them. And it's just step one with the film because it doesn't take you all the way. Some people can go all the way with the film, but with a lot, it just kind of stirs up both sides and provokes discussion, then can lead into a deeper journey of like reading a book and belonging to a group of people. Book clubs are wonderful places of change. They're fertile places of ground where people can read, meditate, discuss, and change. And it's a long, slow process. Jesus used the image of a seed growing. I mean, you look at the parables of Jesus, you'd be looking at those parables, you'd be thinking that guy was a farmer. Mostly of his images were about trees budding, about seeds growing, that organic process. It takes a while. But in community, see, is what keeps us going. Like, see what we're doing right here? We're in community together. It's not just me alone here in Louisiana or you there. We're doing this together. And just like you have different logs in a fire that keep the fire going, that's what we do for each other in this movement. Did you have some ideas, Carrie, about what the people in the United States can do to end the death penalty?
You know, honestly, I think education, 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 and really this goes for Pennsylvania too, because
Yeah.
you know, it's been a while since we've had an execution in Pennsylvania, and a lot of Pennsylvanians don't even realize we had, not only do we have the death penalty in Pennsylvania, but we have one of the largest death rows in the country. And
How many y'all have?
mm,
How many on death
I
row?
would know that.
Close to 100?
I maybe even over.
Just under 100,
Just
but
under it.
not
Yeah,
just
okay.
under 100.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah,
See, and
yeah.
then they just kind of are forgotten. Even, let me tell you, when I was there for the execution of Ivan Cantu, Texas has killed over 500 people. There were people in Texas that did not even know those executions were taking place because they're so removed in their whole lifestyle and their daily life from it. And because they don't see it, but the eye doesn't see, the heart can't feel. So got to bring them close. Any way to bring them close. Witness to innocence, getting out there and giving talks and sharing their experience of just how you can be innocent. And in this broken system, they can grab you, and next thing you know, you're on death row. Got to just show how human this system is, and made up of human beings, whimsical human beings that can make so many mistakes. Look at this war. Look at this war in Iraq. God, I mean, look at this. These decisions of these individuals to do this with these huge consequences. Look at Gaza. I mean, it's decisions by a few powerful people have such huge implications for the suffering of people. That Stalin said, if you kill one person, it's murder. If you kill 1 million, it's a statistic. And so you get fuzzed over with the statistics of it, and we can't comprehend it. It's too much for us. But it's all related. The microcosm of it all is that you can take this person, we decide he's a criminal, not fit to live, and we can kill him, and we will make it legal. And in that microcosm, then you take a country, same thing, but using violence. And then the way religion is quoted, the way the book of Revelations is quoted. I've read a few things that some members of the army are getting this thing of, have you heard about this? Of that for the apocalypse to come, we're going to usher it in by this war in Iran. I mean, it's been around before, but they're quoting the book of Revelations, which may be one of the most violent books of the Bible, because it shows Christ coming back and throwing sinners into a pool of fire and killing everybody, killing all the unbelievers. So you can always find these images of violence in the Bible, so it can go both ways. You can quote it both ways.
Yeah, you just led into another question that's in the chat box. And like when you're talking about, the way that religion is being used, it gets into culture, right? And so
Sure.
how do we change the culture, not just of the death penalty, but of incarceration? How do we change incarceration culture is the question that came up.
Yeah. Well, watch what some people are doing. Let me tell you about this one little bright and shining light for a while in Louisiana. We had a decent Jason Williams who ran to be a district attorney in New Orleans. And he campaigned, I am not going to seek the death penalty. And he becomes the DA. He establishes in the DA's office a civil rights division and put in some good young lawyers, one, Emily Maw, who had led up the Innocence Project. And what they did was the legislature in Louisiana, again for one brief and shining moment, said that excessive sentencing of people, that the lawyers could look at the cases of individual people who've been incarcerated a long time, they have a good record, and then present through the DA this plea to get them released. And they freed over 300 people from excessive sentencing in Louisiana. Then you have this governor coming down, on it, stopped that. Legislature changed it so that you couldn't do it anymore. But 300 human beings, most of them young black men, are not so young anymore. Many of them there for nonviolent crimes with drugs had been sentenced to life without parole. We have the harshest sentencing in the United States in Louisiana. And it's pure legacy out of slavery, pure legacy. And 300 human beings got out. And so you look at those moments, just like what we're doing in Illinois. Let's just hold the light. We can do this. And that keeps our own fire blazing in our own hearts so that we keep reaching out to each other to initiate new ways, creative ways to end this thing.
So, you had mentioned the fire in your heart. There are two related questions. One is, do you know when your book is due to be published?
Oh God, no, can't even tell. It's so
Fair,
complex.
fair. Still working on it. Still
We're
working.
hoping, yeah, we're still working on it. And
Um,
luckily, I mean, Random House isn't pressing me when you gonna get this book. I think they just kind of whenever it comes. But I'm working with a great team. Mike Radlitz, our sociologist, finding patterns that we can make connections with, and Tom Dibdall's helping me sort out. It was just ghastly what they did to Manuel. I mean, claimed they had one witness, the state's witness, who actually was the real murderer of Manuel's wife and her friend. So we just blowing open the book in chapter one and just show how this guy is the state's witness is the actual murderer. We're showing it, how he did it, motive, means, opportunity, showing why he was mad at Manuel and wanted to get revenge on him. But it's a different way to start a book. And so anyway, we have like a lot of pieces in it, but working steadily on it. And it's the first time I've really worked with a team of a lawyer and sociologist, Mike Radley and Tom Dibdall. So, but it goes slower working with a team. But anyway, so it'll be always have an organic feel about a book that it's going to come out when it's going to come out.
so that's your future book. The related question is about the book that was just published.
Oh yeah, the graphic.
The graphic edition. Yeah, so why did you agree to do a graphic edition of Dead Man Walking, and who are you hoping the audience will be for that?
Well, we're getting it out to young people across the country. I went about 3 weeks ago, maybe a month now, and met with all the presidents of Catholic universities in the United States to just show them the graphic. The graphic was done by this artist, Catherine Anyanga Grunwald in Sweden. Anne Rose Vines wrote the script of it because she's been my editor and we work really closely together and she does social media for us too. They did the hard work on the book for 6 years. So it came out in November. So what we did was, with the help of a donor, we got books to just do massive distribution of the books to get it out to young people. And so I'm going to be going, I go to DePaul every year for a week because they have the archives of our ministry at DePaul in Chicago. And so go there and teach for a week and we're getting the book into the classes. So we're doing whatever we can to get that book out there as much as we can. And it's for young people. It's very powerful because the artist is so good. And the reason we got Catherine was she not only does the drawings, but she can do atmospheric stuff in it to give you a feeling of things. It's just really, really excellent work. And so just want to get it out to young people. And when we go to DePaul this year, we're going to be getting that book into the classes and bringing the young people through the journey, through the pictures. And I'm curious to see what difference it's going to make. Because, like I was saying about a book before, when you read a book, you're quiet and you're making your own picture of things. It can, and I know that can change people. So I'm curious to see how this graphic edition maybe can make a difference. Anything else coming up in the chat room?
There's a couple, and they're related, and so how do you keep the fire going? How do you go in for the long haul? And how is it that you ended up, I mean, you've dedicated your life to this. And so like, what was the spark that led you to do that? And how do you keep it going?
I'm so grateful that I woke up. I mean, when you're privileged, you could be spending your life on a lot of different things, even being a nun. Everything taken care of when you're a nun. You got health care, you have community, you have everything you need. And I woke up to justice and the gospel. And I'm still so grateful that I woke up. And so then that brings you into these new territories. On the new territories, going to death row, continuing to go to, being faithful to Manuel every month, going to Angola. They even let me drive in the Blooming prison now. They trust me that I'm not going to be bringing in guns or contraband to go see him and others, and then to get out there to the public. So the fire is, first of all, a gratitude. I could have gone my whole life and never been involved in the biggest issues of life about others. And it's God's grace that I woke up. And then when you wake up, and it brings you into community, the human rights community. I'm with lawyers and people who work for human rights. I'm for groups like yours that's working to end this thing, having the hope that, yeah, we are going to do this. And it lights your fire. You blow on the coals together, and the flame comes up again. And that's what we do. That's what we're doing tonight with each other. And that keeps me going. And then a personal life of meditation, staying close to the core of my own soul, recognizing when I get depleted, uh, and just hanging in there and just doing it. But doing it in community with people. So that's why when I heard Pennsylvanians, Marshall, Dayan, I'm doing it. Here we are.
I'm on Team Marshall too. I mean, let me just say it.
What keeps you going, Marshall? Tell us about your Hebrew fire, the burning bush.
But first you got to unmute.
You got to unmute yourself,
I'm going to
Marshall.
tell y'all a story. I was a junior at the University of Georgia in the summer of 1980 when the state of Georgia announced it was going to carry out its first execution in 20 years. And I heard this on the campus radio station, WUOG, and I thought to myself, in a democratic republic, if my government's going to kill somebody, that means I'm going to kill somebody because I am the government. We all are. I shouldn't let this happen without thinking about it. So I decided to drive from Athens, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia for a vigil the night before the scheduled execution. And I found myself in the Central Presbyterian Church directly across the street from the Georgia State Capitol, sitting in a pew, listening to clergy people like Reverend Murphy Davis and
Oh,
lawyers
yeah.
like Millard Farmer
Oh, wow.
talking about the death penalty. And you know what? This man, Jack Potts, who Georgia wanted to kill, he committed a terrible, terrible, terrible crime. Police were coming to his house to serve an arrest warrant for something that was far less serious. And when they arrived, he started shooting out of his house,
Oh,
and they got into a gunfight and killed a police officer.
oh.
And in the course of the gunfight, he himself got shot in the mouth. And he was arrested and charged with whatever they were bringing the arrest warrant for, but he was also charged with the murder of this police officer and tried for murder in Georgia and sentenced to death. And he'd spent a couple of years on death row in Georgia, and they refused to give him any dental work for
Oh.
where he got shot in the mouth because they said, well, we're going to execute you anyway.
Mm.
And he decided that he would just as soon die as to have to eat soup for another meal because they weren't giving him any dental work. And so he fired his lawyers and suspended his appeals. And that's
Mm.
how this case got set for a execution.
Mm.
And so I'm sitting there in this pew and I'm thinking about this, and my own theology is that instead of completing the creation of the universe in 6 days, the Almighty created us to be partners in completing the creation of the universe. And
Mhm.
as we've already talked about earlier tonight, Helen, well, my tradition is that we were created, the Hebrew is B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And I thought, well, how can we throw away any human resources if we have this sacred obligation to be partners with God in completing the creation? Because everybody's got something they can bring to that effort, no matter what they've done.
Yeah.
And I found myself really nauseous and just crying uncontrollably at the idea that the state of Georgia was going to involuntarily put blood on my hands. And I didn't want that to happen. And I couldn't make the nausea go away, and I couldn't stop crying until this little light bulb went off over my head. And I thought, well, if I want to do everything I can do to keep the blood off my hands, I better go to law school. And so I decided that night that I would go to law school and learn how to become a capital defense lawyer. So,
I love
the
that.
46 years from 1980 to now have really just been incredibly selfish. I was just trying to keep the blood off my hands and do everything to make myself feel better.
Oh, that is a great story of a good Jewish boy. That's an incredible story. I mean, look at that. What a blessing.
And so, to answer the question, what keeps me going? Well, if I don't keep doing this, the nausea comes back. And I don't I don't like the feeling of being nauseous.
Avoiding nausea. Oh God, that has deep existential tones. Didn't Sartre write something about nausea? No, but I mean, actually, you experienced physical nausea.
I I really
Wow,
did.
look at that. Wow, that's deep. But then it's what you did. You know what? I experience it as currents in rivers. When we hit a current, there's a current in things, you know. And when we just kind of go and just start circling around and just kind of dead end, and that's when we need to reach out in community. I've never been so alive in my life. The irony that I would go and fall down this laundry chute and be with this man on death row, witness his execution, and it was going to cause me to be alive for things in a way I never had in my whole life. How did that happen? And I just think of the privilege of accompanying people who were very, very courageous and brave in the way that they met their deaths. I don't know. To be awake is a great grace, and to be awake with each other is a great grace.
Yeah, I think it's a Sikh activist, Valerie Kaur, that says something very similar. She says, people ask, how do you keep going? First of all, she started her career as a human rights lawyer fighting against hate, and she had this conversion and said, you know what? I'm done fighting hate. For the rest of my life, I'm going to be fighting for love instead of fighting against
Yeah.
hate. And she has this saying, she says, every morning I get up and I say, I get to be alive. I get to be alive today, and I get to be alive today with you.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. So,
So
we're coming up on the end of the time together. It went fast.
good.
Question about, is this webinar going to be available? Yes, 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 it is. It will be on the YouTube channel. Probably give us a couple days, but it should be there, and then we'll email it out to anybody who registered as well. Closing words for any and both of you.
I just want to thank Witness to Innocence.
Yes,
Um, Witness to Innocence is just a magnificent organization um, of
right.
exonerated death row inmates. These are people who spent time on death rows across the country for crimes they didn't commit. Um, and, they could be very bitter and they could be very angry and they could be very self-centered, but they're not. These are people who understand that nobody should be in the situation that they were in guilty or not guilty. And the folks at Witness to Innocence just do magnificent work. And I just want to thank them for their incredible work and for their being such good partners with us at Pennsylvanians Against the Death Penalty for these webinars. I'm really grateful.
Oh, great, me too. I guess this would be my parting shot. Hope is a verb. Hope is something you do. And if we're just standing on the side of the river, especially now, we can get all the information in the world through our iPhone right into our hand. And we can just read all this information coming in about the world. And so we're standing on the side of the river and looking at all the things going on in the world. But the minute we act, the minute we take a hold of a rope, some rope connected to life and to others, and begin to pull, life flows through us. But it's a verb. You have to do hope to feel hope. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. And so that is how I think of it and how I try to live out of it. And we need other people. We need other people. And so I want to thank each of you and those that I can't see, all the people participating, the community that's out there tonight. This is the way we change the world and how we keep the fire going inside of ourselves. So thank you for letting me participate tonight. It's such a joy and a great grace for me to be with you. So y'all, let's keep going. Pennsylvania is ripe. They're just like pieces of it coming together. I can feel it. And I just look forward to hearing what's going to happen next with the young people of Pennsylvania going to initiate something great in the state. So thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Nighty night.